Morality is a lie we tell ourselves to seem virtuous. And the reason why I say that, particularly, I'm not off the bat denouncing the overall concept of morality. More of I am focusing on the idea of subjectivity and objectivity. Objectively, morality is a good thing, right? There's a lot of things that overall, as a collective, as a society, we can agree is good or bad, right? Like, for example, kicking a baby in the face is inherently evil. That is a moral standard that most individuals who are not demented or sociopaths or, any normal individual can agree on, right? And then there are other things that may a lot of individuals may be able to agree on, like punishing an individual for committing a crime. It's only justice. But where I would like to push back on that fact is when individuals gain a sense of ego and pride towards themselves to the point that they feel morally righteous compared to other individuals. And that's where I say morality is a thing that we tell ourselves to seem more virtuous. Sometimes we create ideas in our head that our morality is greater than another's morality, or our right is more right than another's, right? And I believe this is a lie because a lot of, or some people that I've seen around the world tend to give out almost judgment towards morality in the span of what is right and what is wrong. Additionally, I'd like to add to that point and face it towards the concept of equality and breeding forth a perfect world, right? Because normally with these sort of people that have this almost elevated sense of morality, there comes a sense of perfection in their works, a sense of perfection in what they proclaim. And maybe even individuals that try to say and believe or at least try to preach the idea that everybody is equal or born equal, and or in a sense everyone should be equal, when in reality that is an impossible concept to fathom or even bring forth in such a world. And I say that equality does not exist, and it never has, and it never will, and it's almost impossible to create, because to acknowledge that someone is equal to you would have to admit that every single person is of equal value, which is not true. Now, before I continue, I'd like to say that everybody is equal in the sense of dignity, right? We are all human beings. One human being's life isn't worth inherently, right? As a baby, inherently, one human being's life is not worth more than another human being's life. But in a more socialistic standard, it is. And for example, let's say the president's life. For most people watching this, you're probably a normal person who lives within the laws, lives within society. You most likely are not worth more than the president or a famous artist or singer, right? There's people who would be willing to die for those individuals. So off the bat, in an attempt of trying to establish equality, you almost have to acknowledge that equality doesn't exist. It never really has. And we've tried to create something to establish a system that just will never work. It's almost, I'll give you an analogy. It's almost like pushing two opposite ends or two equal ends of a magnet together. They'll never connect, they'll never touch, they'll always push against each other. And that's the point that I'm trying to make when I say equality doesn't exist in the hopes of creating a perfect world. And I believe Kendrick said it best in a song called Pride. He said, "A perfect world is never perfect, only filled with lies." That means that the entirety of perfection can only be brought to fruition with lies. I also read a book called The Giver, right? And it takes place in a dystopian almost society, which I'm pretty sure the civilization lives within a bubble. And it's almost this depiction of so-called perfection. but the entire concept of the society is all lies. And the main character starts seeing through those lies. And going back to the main point of morality, all of these points make connect, right? I'm not just spouting random points. I'm saying that a person's sense of morality makes them think that they're more morally just and righteous in the hopes of wanting to create a perfect world, right? So off the bat, thinking that you're morally elevated denounces the idea of equality, because you're already establishing that your thoughts, your ideas, your being, and your overall authority trumps another being's authority. But overall, the point that I'm trying to make here is that perfection is a lie. Equality is a lie. And if we truly want to make any true changes within this world, we need to acknowledge that rather than run from it. Because it's a truth that you can't really run from. And a perfect world doesn't exist. And I believe the first step we can make towards becoming a perfect world is acknowledging those almost elephants in the room. Like, you know that saying, addressing the elephant in the room. We don't want to address the elephant in the room, even though we should, right? Because it's true. We're not born we're born equal, but then over time our value changes based on our contribution to society. And I believe that's the important point that I wanted to make within this video, that we're not equal. You're equal. Your value is based on how you contribute to society. And although inherently when we're born we're all equal, that equality changes. And in acknowledging that we're not equal, that will be the first step to finding true perfection within a society, even though it's impossible to reach that perfection. And last note before I leave it off, it's almost like a curve, or a function. Some functions curve towards zero but never quite hit zero, right? It's impossible for them to hit zero because the number just splits between decimals and decimals, right? It's the same thing here. We'll never reach perfection, not in a million years, but we can begin making our way towards perfection. And I believe just getting close is enough. Thank you for your time.